So, Patrick, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and very happy and honored to be here amongst so many people. So I'm going to first share my screen. Voila. Now I don't see anybody anymore, so can you just confirm that you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen, yeah.
All right, that's great. Okay, well, so the topic of today is employee engagement and why employee engagement is so important even that it's a matter of surviving in the future. So, my name is Patrick de Pauw. I'm CEO and co-founder or founder of Social Seeder. Social Seeder is a combination of a methodology and a platform, and today mainly the purpose is to share as much information as we can with you why employee engagement and employee advocacy is so important. Perhaps just as an introduction, we are a Belgium-based company, but we work with customers all over the world. I will show you later what kind of customers, but they can be very big customers, and there's also small local businesses. Just to start the whole lecture, before I was mainly active in the airline and the travel industry, so completely different. And the small history behind Social Seeder is basically it started 9 years ago. I was uh, managing director of a quite big travel organization, and we spent so much money on Google. And so I was invited to go to the campus in San Francisco, which was great, to follow them for 1 week, but mainly also because they wanted us to sign a contract for the next year. And during that week, I got the results of a question that we've been sending to all our customers. And the question was very easy. Why do you still choose for our travel company? And strangely enough, and afterwards it wasn't so strange, 90% of the people said it's because it was recommended by friends and family. So that was the main idea in the beginning, where I said, like, this is strange because I spent 100% of my marketing budget for the 10% of the people that do not know us. How could I reinforce the fact that people talk about your business and that it influences the choice? So that was the beginning of Social Seeder. In the meantime, we have been evolving quite a lot, but that just for the small history. So some observations that we all know, but it's also interesting just to get the context of employee engagement, employer branding, etc., etc. Perhaps I will also explain all these different things, but I wasn't. It's not the picture when I was born. It's older than this, but yesterday or some years ago, the office was the office. You could also work and do the same job for all your life. It was top down, where today this is basically a picture that I took from the ENJ offices in the Netherlands. I mean, it's nicer than my living room. It's nicer than my home. So I would love to work there. So there were already, even before COVID, quite a lot of initiatives, obviously, to make the environment so pleasing that it looks like your home. And so the environment of business has been changing dramatically. This is just our website today, which I can, well, this is www.socialseeder.com, but we will change it. I will come back to that one because it's a nice anecdote as well. So that was the thing. Yesterday you had an employee and you had a company, and like when I started, well, ended my my studies, I had to go and work in the bank. It was my parents' dream to go and work in the bank. So I went to work in a bank. I didn't have any idea what values the bank had. I just went there to earn money. So there was the company, then there was me, and there was no connection. I didn't have any connection. I didn't know who the management was. I didn't even know whether there was a culture. Where today, everything obviously changes. You have the employees, you have a company, and hopefully the company has some attraction to the employee other than just earning money. And more, and luckily there's also corporate social responsibility. We see quite a lot of companies that are really doing their best, not just to pretend that they are busy with diversity, inclusion, corporate social responsibility, but they really work on what we call giving back to society. So it's not only giving back to the employee, it's also giving back to society. And all this becomes really important for whatever business you will be running or you are running. And also this corporate social responsibility needs to get the attention of employees or people that want to work for you. But how do you do this? It's not always so easy. And obviously, there's the war for talent. There's another war, obviously, but the war for talent is there worldwide. I saw last week figures of what people think will happen in Europe. It was a European study. And by 2030, there would even be 4 times more people. The companies would look for 4 times more people than they already look for today. So we see on one hand side that there's a problem with employee engagement due to COVID, due to remote working. People have more time to look somewhere else. There's also much more opportunity to work for another job, and everything changed so much with COVID because you didn't really went to the office. Now we have this regime where most of the people, at least in I would say Benelux and France, they are asked for the white collars to come back for 2 days a week. But the link with the company is much lower than before, meaning that there's more people looking to change jobs. And on the other hand, the world is changing so fast that every single company needs, for instance, ICT people, but they don't find the ICT people. They don't have the awareness for ICT people, not only ICT people, but for other people. So what we see is really a big stress on HR at this moment because they lose the attention of their current co-workers and they don't get the attention of the new people that they want to get in. And this is what, becoming a critical matter. This is also why the title of this lecture is it's so important if you want to survive in the coming years to attract the right talents. And we see businesses even stopping some activities because they don't even find the talent. And again, it's not going to change. So what you need to do as a company is you need to stand out from the crowd, be different. And one of the things to create impact is authenticity. If we have time, I can after, because I have some slides and then afterwards we'll also have, by the way, you can ask any question. I will not see them because now I have my full screen in front of me. But at the end of the lecture, obviously we will be asking or responding to all the questions you might have. So we have plenty of time for that as well. So please do not hesitate to put your question on the channel, and we will come back to that at the end of the session. But so as a company, again, you need to stand out to create attention of the people, also to create the attention of your current coworkers. And one of the things, again, that we've seen is that the authenticity becomes really important. But I will come back to this. Authenticity means also the authenticity of the messages you're making, or you're making, but also the pictures you will be using are very important. So that's why we always say authenticity creates relevancy. We can even say how big the difference is between a real picture and a stock picture. Stock pictures people don't like so much. They don't go on social media to look for stock pictures. They go on social media to look for the real deal. And also in video, it's just the same. And this is just some of our staff pictures. So again, some reasons why we will come to something which is called ambassadorship to increase your engagement is, again, Nielsen, they do every year. They have every year a research all over the world, by the way. In that research, it's been 92% for a couple of years already, but 92% of people trust suggestions from family and friends. It's all over the world the same. This is the slide, by the way, where you can see the difference between, I just marked two of them. Online video ads, they have a trustworthiness of 36%, and recommendations from people you know have 92% of trustworthiness. So obviously it's all over the world. It's even a bit higher in Asia. And it's a bit, the lowest, by the way, is in Europe. It's also in between in the US. But you can also see that all the rest of the marketing efforts that you can do, they obviously, we're not saying that you shouldn't do them. They create impact, but the biggest impact is the top, is your own people, your peers, your network. They will create the biggest impact in society. But what do we? So we already what companies change. That's the first thing. They need to stand out from the crowd. They need to get the attention of people to survive and to be able to grow. But what do we see in most of the companies? Because we are currently working with about 280 companies. And how we're talking about companies of a size of 250 coworkers and more, so mid-sized companies and big companies, is that only 1% of the workforce actively shares company content, knowing that it's so important, knowing that if Patrick shares something, it creates much more impact. Still, very few people do it in your company, and it's a shame because, and the reason, there's lots of reasons why they don't do it, is because they don't have time, they don't know how, they don't know social media, they're a bit afraid because they would say something wrong. So there's so many reasons why people don't actively share company content. And then, so this is a bit what we try to do. What if 20% or more of your workforce shares your story? What would be the difference? What would that create? Would that create the standout position for your company? And can we create 25% or more of the workforce to share your story? And this is where the ambassador side of the story starts. We call it the ambassador side of the story because it is obviously possible to create an engaged workforce that is not only engaged, but they also start doing advocacy for your company. An ambassador. An ambassador is not an influencer. An influencer is somebody who is paid to do certain things. An ambassador, in our definition, is not paid. Is somebody who really believes in your organization and who does it. It's so important. On the bottom, they do so on a voluntary basis. Ambassadors will share content, and then comes the authenticity. When they think it's interesting, when they believe in your culture and your values, and when they are proud to share it on social media. Once you have this, you will create huge impact. And often I got the remark of companies saying like, do you really think that people share on a voluntary basis? Don't we need to get incentives out there? Well, I can tell you, and I will prove in this lecture, that you can ask your coworkers to share without always having to pay them or giving something in return. Obviously, you have to give gratitude in return, but you don't always need to incentivize people. There's lots of people that want to do something for themselves and for the business. Just the first of so many figures is, and this comes out of our platform and our 8 years of knowledge. If an ambassador shares, let's say, an open position or a video or a blog or a Facebook post of your company, on average, you will reach 317 people. So for every single ambassador that shares something, there's about 317 people that will have seen your message. And during COVID, it was even a bit higher. It went up to 400. Why? Probably because more people were also working from home, they were working remotely. So they had a bit more time to spend on social media, and so their the spend or the attention that they created was even bigger. And this is just this is showing very clearly what the difference is when, because some of the companies, some of the people sometimes argue, yeah, but I have my own blog and I have my own communication as a company, and I have these real nice stories, and I can just share them myself. Yes, obviously, and you should do that. But the fact is that if a company shares content on social media on average, now this is a bit okay. Um, how do you say this? These are quite a lot of figures, but there's something like called like an organic reach, meaning that social media channels, obviously they have algorithms, and obviously they also want you to spend on social media, so they're not going to give you the full exposure. So suppose that you have 1,000 followers, and as an organization you will share something, you will reach about 30 people. If you want to reach more people, you have to pay for it, which is a pity. So this is the organic reach. But suppose that you have an ambassador that shares your content on social media, and we come back to the previous slide. Suppose that you only have 10 ambassadors and you ask them to share something with the average of 370 people per person ambassador that you reach, you already reach between 3,170 and 4,000 people. Just imagine only 10 ambassadors. So what a huge impact this could have on your organization. So summing up a couple of things that we already said is, well, there's some new things, and knowing also internationally that 98% of the employees at least uses social media once a day. So there's no, you shouldn't be ashamed to ask them like, can you also perhaps from time to time do something for the organization? A second thing is that this is a source of LinkedIn. Brand messages are reshared 24 times more frequently when distributed by employees. So if an employee shares content, it will, the time that it's active on social media is much longer than if a company is sharing something. And this comes from LinkedIn. And content shared by employees gets more than 8 times more engagement than content shared by brand channels. So engagement meaning I like it, comments, so you even get more interaction if it's by people instead of companies. And there's also leads more because everybody is in a business. That's again one of the issues why employee engagement is so important for the future of your business. Is that if you communicate through your coworkers, it's also a business, could increase your business because the conversion goes up by 7. And this is IBM that had this study last year. And also very important is that if you, for instance, thanks to the engagement of your coworkers, you have a new customer, the retention will be 37% higher than if that customer would just come through the traditional marketing channels. And this is Deloitte that made a study also last year. So people that choose for a company thanks to their peers, thanks to their network, they will stay longer a customer than somebody who just came in because they saw publicity somewhere. So all this and also with all the customer database we have, there's some reasons in general that organizations are interested to really start with an active employee engagement program. And I just sum up some of them. So the first and the most important one, specifically now, I would say post-COVID, is to recruit the right talents. We all know how much time and money it costs to find the right talent. So the main issue today for the companies is I really need to get the right people in, and I'm going to start with an employee engagement program in my company. The second reason is to keep the talents on board. The more you can share the story of your company and the vision of your company and all the initiatives you're taking, the more people, sorry, the more the people will stay on board, which is also a good sign. To keep them on board and to engage them, obviously. And also to communicate about themselves as an interesting employer. It's obviously next to recruit the right talents, but it's more, I would say, even more strategically long term. I'm really a very interesting company with a good vision. So please keep in mind that once that you ended your studies, you could come by and work for us. To communicate about their brand's values and beliefs. This is the employer brand, obviously. I think that everybody knows about employer branding. We also see, just as a sidetrack, that more and more companies after COVID are really starting up employer branding in their company because they know and they understand that it's becoming more and more important because again of this war for talent. Before, I would say before COVID, it was often the big companies love brands that were busy with employer brand. Employer brand was a very nice word and you had to do an employer branding. Now we see that it's just a must have and we have much more companies starting with employer branding, which is a good sign. Another reason is to communicate and to promote or communicate about their corporate social responsibility campaigns or initiatives. Something that you can't really do in publicity. It's going to be very difficult to make a publicity about we are all into green because people will see it as a greenwashing thing and they don't believe that. So the corporate social responsibility is really becoming very important, but you have to get the message out in a very authentic way. Otherwise, people won't trust that. And sometimes also as a social selling tool. So that's the last one, to encourage your workforce to become their sales force. You can even motivate the commercial team to become an ambassador, and they could become thought leaders thanks to employer engagement, thanks to content that you're sending them. And by doing so, you will also increase and see increased sales. So all this is nice, lots of figures, but the main thing is how. Okay, Patrick, this is all very nice. I got your message, but how do you start with it? So this is where we, after 8 years, we developed. We call it our ambassador program canvas. And this is basically what we do for every single organization when they want to start with an employee engagement dash employee advocacy program. So again, employee engagement is I want engagement of my coworkers. Employee advocacy is I want my coworkers to become an ambassador so that I can get that message out. The ambassador canvas, and we will go through all the different steps because these are very important. Just a very small site. There will be lots of questions, but there are some things that I'm going to mention. We've been doing, like I said, we've been doing these exercises for 8 years. And what we've seen is that we reach about 95% of the goals. If you take the right steps, there's going to be a very high probability that you will reach the goal of your program. So don't look at the small 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s because they're. It's not that they are randomly, but it's. This is because it's not an exercise today. I'm just going to go through the different steps that you have to take into consideration before you start a program. And basically, the first one is on top left, goals. Why am I starting a program? And what would be the goal? Is the goal, like we had some slides before, I want to get more attention to the potential ambassadors. I want to have an increased sales. I want to see more people coming to my website. I want to have a higher engagement in my company. So there's different goals possible to start a program, but you have to define the main goal. There can be secondary goals, obviously. So some companies, they have different goals. We will go to some examples later on. So that's the first thing. Second, also very important, we go down one step, the why. Very interesting guy that talks about the why is famous guy Simon Sinek, but the why is very important. If you ask your coworkers to take one step more in their engagement, you have to explain why they should do this. And again, the why is not always because you will get money or you will get badges or you will be, I don't know, whatever, we will get you something in return. Most of the whys is because if we do jointly an effort, it will be interesting for your future and the future of our company. But you have to explain the why, otherwise it's going to be very difficult to engage people in a program. And obviously we help you because we have lots of examples. The next is number 4, recruit. How are we going to recruit the co-workers to become an ambassador? I will show you later. We have obviously ways to do that. But one of the things that is very important is start with few to reach a lot of people. Don't just send out a mail to everybody, hoping that some people will become an ambassador. No, you just start with the people that probably you detected that are already. There's always some people that are already active in your company. Could be management, could be yourself, could be some people that are really engaged already on social media. In some companies it's only 3, 4, 5 people. Doesn't matter, but you start with the ones where you are. We call them power ambassadors, people that are already at this moment sharing from time to time content. You invite them first, and then you invite the rest of your team, and you will see that if you write a small message saying like there's already 5 people on board and that's their names and it would be great if you want to join, you will see that lots of people will join because they want to join the group that already exists. And the second thing in recruitment, which is very important, is segmentation. We have the possibility to, you can ask certain things to your potential ambassadors, like what is your current job, or what content would you like to receive, or a combination of all this, so that if you get people on board and you want them to spread messages of your company, that you send them the right message. Just a small example is in general, an accountant will not share, I'm looking for an ICT colleague, because often in the network of the accountants, there's lots of accountants. So if you look for ICT people, the best is to send that message to the current ICT crew that you already have, because they love to share content like this because they are looking for a colleague. So segmentation is really important in order not to burn your ambassador, because once they join the program, you need obviously to gain their confidence, and you do this because you don't do this to just ask them every day to send to spread message on their social media. People won't do this. So the recruitment is a very important thing. Number 5, activation. Activation is basically, do you have a content calendar? Because if you start a program of an employee engagement program, and we go back to the first slide, it's not a tactic thing, it's a strategic thing. It's about the future of your company. It's not something like, I'm going to try it for 1 month and then we'll see. No, it's something that should be really on top level, and it has to be strategic, meaning that you need to have more than one video or one blog, because that doesn't do the thing. If you just ask once to people to share, it will perhaps create some impact, but it won't create so much impact. The impact that you create is because you have a certain frequency. Now, this frequency is not always so high, because that's another question that we often have, like, okay, but do I need to have stories every day? No, not every day. We will come back to the right frequency, but activation is basically, do you have already something to tell? Because if you don't have something to tell, or are you willing to do that? Do you want to create messages that are interesting? Obviously, if you don't have this, then there's a problem. Then we go back one. Then we go down one. Engage. So next step is, how am I going to be? What am I going to do to keep the people on board? Again, because it's not tactical, it's strategic. So you want to keep your ambassadors a long time on board. I already mentioned that we've seen that the pure gamification doesn't really do the thing. If you do gamification, you see that at the end you come back to the 1% of people, because they will get something in return, and all the rest, they have not such a big network. They will try to share, but they don't get anything, or they're at the end of the tail, and at a certain moment they will disengage again. So the way you engage ambassadors, and that's what we've seen, is because you give something in return to the whole group. Like we do a barbecue for our ambassadors, or often what we see more and more is we give LinkedIn trainings to all our ambassadors. So you give something back, and obviously you have to, from time to time, also um, uh, thank them for all the efforts, because also just a thank you message people love from time to time. The only acceptance is that if you ask your coworkers to share open positions. In most of the companies, there's also like a bonus when, thanks to Patrick, somebody comes in. Well, obviously, that's a very healthy engagement that you can keep also in the program. So thinking about how do I create a group, and how can I get how can I give attention to the whole group instead of how do I give attention to number 1, 2, and 3, and all the rest I forget. It's very important. And the middle one, harvest, is basically depending on the goals. What we try to do is to create KPIs. So we try to get a measurable result depending on the goal. Suppose that the goal is I want to attract more people. The harvest could be I want to attract 25 people thanks to the program. So then at the end of the program, well, we do it per year. Every year you can see whether the program has the result that you intended it to have. And like I already said, if you have the right order, we see 95% of results. They reach the KPIs at the end of the year. 95%, which is huge. The 5% that doesn't reach their goals is most of the times because there's a problem at the activation part. They don't have the right content, or very often the content is too commercial. And if your content is too commercial, people won't spread it. You cannot ask, or you cannot expect that your coworkers are free publicity machines. They won't do this. So the content needs to be right. But I can give, if we have time, I can give quite a lot of examples. There are some other things, but this is mainly because of the platform. What we see, I just want to end here. This is basically on the bottom left is shareholders is really important, because one of the biggest issues or questions that we have is, okay, Patrick, in other companies, who is dealing with such a program in your company? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it communication? Is it HR? Well, basically, the ideal answer to this would be it's everybody, because it's so business critical. It should be everybody. But what we see is often more, I would say, more and more that it's in between communication and HR, where the initiative is taken and they are the main shareholders. But obviously, around the table, you can have and sales and marketing helping you. And again, a program, an employee engagement program, it's not a full time. It's just, most of the times I only say, it's just asking yourself once a week, do we have something interesting to tell to our coworkers that also could be interesting to the outside world? And obviously the answer should be yes, we have something interesting. If the answer is no, then you have a lack of content. But most of the times we see that the initiative is taken in HR. Why? Because they have this biggest, challenge with the engagement and with hiring and attracting new people. So just to go back a bit to the learnings that we have is, I'm going to repeat a couple of things, but it's really, really important to start. If you start a program of employee engagement, start with your power ambassadors. Start with the people that are already a bit active today, a bit or less active today. And you will see that it's like oil, it will spread. It's like the first, that if somebody falls in the street, the first people that help the person are the real leaders, and then the rest will follow. So that's a really important thing. And involve management, it's a strategic thing. Now, if we sometimes we see programs fail because management doesn't, we had a company and said like the program doesn't work, and I went into the details of the ambassadors, and there was nobody of C-level, nobody from management who became an ambassador. Now this is just stupid, because if you ask your coworkers to become an ambassador, and imagine that the coworker passes the manager or the CEO, and he asks, "Are you also an ambassador?" And the CEO has to say, "No, I'm not an ambassador." Then everything falls apart. So that's, again, it's also very important to convince your management to at least become an ambassador. That doesn't even mean that they have to share it, but they have to become an ambassador. Now, define a project owner, sorry. Project owner is basically the person that says, do we have something interesting to say? That's basically the role of the project owner. Again, it's not a full-time. What we've seen in most of the businesses is it takes about 2 hours a week. So it's not so heavy, but it creates real big impact. And obviously, like I already said, do you have a content plan? If not, I think the first thing you have to do is to start creating a content plan. Also there's canvases, existing business canvases, to make it very easy. One of the things is sometimes people don't know how to create the content. And also, this is not so difficult. We will come back to that at the end of this session. If you ask your people to become an ambassador and you ask them to share from time to time something, keep the frequency. It's not because it's July, August, or it's not because there's something happening that you have to stop the frequency. Frequency is really very important. You can also reuse content, because nobody remembers everything that you've been sending out. So you can also say like, okay, this content is last year, it's still okay. I can reuse that also eventually during holidays, for instance. In corporate social responsibility campaigns, people kind of love these messages that you care about culture, that you care about nature, that you care about diversity. And again, we also see that this is most of the times when companies start with including corporate social responsibility, you will also see that there's going to be more people willing to become engaged and ambassador. Measure impact. You can start whatever program, but if you don't measure the impact, it's going to be very difficult at the end to convince management that is so strategically important. So that's why measuring impact is important. Employer branding is not just a fluffy thing that you need to do because it looks nice and No, it really creates a big difference. Create common goals, like I mentioned, common goals for the ambassador program. There are some companies that also create common corporate social responsibility goals, like if you all achieve that result, or if once that we have 250 ambassadors, we will also, I don't know, invest in trees planting project or something like this. So this is a very good initiative and creates quite a lot of engagement. And give you, I just mentioned, I forgot this is also in the canvas, give the program a name. It's if you start a program, it's a bit stupid, but you give it a name. There's not so much restaurants out there without a name. It's just the same. If you want to create a community, you should give that community a name, and the name should be different than the ambassador program of the name of your company. So you can be a bit more creative. And then just don't look too much at the pictures. The pictures doesn't have anything to do with the topics. It's just because we're always busy with authenticity. That's why I changed some pictures into what we call authentic pictures. But again, I will come back to this and how big the impact is of the pictures or the world you see around you in the office. And if you just take pictures, you will see what huge difference that will be. The wrong way. The wrong way is when you imagine that ambassadors are free publicity channels. I already mentioned this, but we still have from time to time these companies that say like, I want everybody to become an ambassador. I'm going to send them all the commercial information. We are open on Sunday. We are the cheapest. We are the best. It will die almost immediately. So that doesn't work. Is gamification king? We don't think so. We think that you can do from time to time some gamification, but it shouldn't be king, because gamification, the problem with gamification again is you don't really learn from the results. If you pay people to do something, you don't learn. They will, and this comes also from my experience with influencers. Obviously, if I pay an influencer to say that that hotel in New York is great and he or she can stay there for free, that doesn't mean that the hotel is great. It's just because they went there for free. It's the same for employee engagement. If you are going to incentivize people, you don't really get, because our program measures the result. If people are not willing to share, that means that your content is not good enough. So the authentic way is always the best way also to learn from results, to adapt the way you communicate, and then you create your impact. The wrong way, burn ambassadors. Oh, I want my ambassadors to share every day a message. No, that won't work. That's absolutely foolish. What we see, at least in Europe, is if you start an employee engagement program, you shouldn't in the beginning have more than one campaign per week. So it could even be in the beginning less. That depends a bit on the cultural. The more we go to the north, the more we see that people are even more active on social media. The more we go to the south, we see that there's some more reluctance to the frequency. The wrong way is also to exclude people. We have quite a lot of companies that say, okay, I want to start a program like this, but I'm only going to start with, I don't know, a certain department, or I'm not really sure whether I should spread it all the way, because you never know that some people could have other thoughts. Well, if you exclude people, it's not going to help. You can exclude people in the beginning because you want to have a proof of concept and you want to see whether it works. But at a certain moment, if you have an ambassador program, the ambassador program should be overall your company. Exclude corporate social responsibility campaigns is not the right way to do it. If you have them, you have to include them. And obviously, like I already said, if you don't measure impact, it just stays like, again, like I said, a fluffy thing in your organization. So you need to measure the impact. And last thing, and this is a very important one, don't think ambassadors are all the same. Commercial people, they don't have any problem in frequency. They are used to be much more commercial and active on social media, for instance, on LinkedIn, but non-commercial people, they like ICT, often they don't like to share so much. So the frequency should be adapted to the people in your organization. So, and if you do this, if you would follow all this, what can you expect? And again, this is just taking out all the learnings from the programs that we've been running, is at least 25% of ambassadors. That is what we see. And this is for companies from 250 co-workers and more. The smaller your company, obviously, the higher the percentage can be of ambassadors. Out of your 25% of ambassadors, you can expect, if you have the right content, that 35% will be sharing your content. So meaning that not everybody is going to share the content all the time, which is logical. Sometimes the content isn't suited, or they don't really, they find it not interesting to share that on their social media, or they're on holiday, or there's always reasons why they don't share, which is absolutely no problem. But still 35% will active share. Per ambassador, you can expect around 10 visitors coming back to read or discover your content. So if Patrick shares an open position or a video or a blog on one social media channel, so I share this on LinkedIn or I share it on Facebook, what we see on average is that there's going to be around 10 visitors. I'm not talking about visitors coming back to your website. So it's not about the times your message has been seen, how many people really come back, they click and they come back to your environment and they read your content. And so you should expect a long-term impact on your sales, on your brand, and on your recruitment. And from what we've seen the last 6 months, this is a technical thing because we installed something that can detect how many people apply when you have a program. It's the most efficient recruitment program you can imagine. It's the cheapest and it's the most efficient recruitment program. So that's already what you can expect. Now, just some examples of a company. The slides will be shared, like already mentioned in the beginning. So I'm not going to go too much into detail because I want to keep it in between 1 hour, and then we have time for questions and answers. But here we have a company, an international company, where they wanted to give the opportunity to the co-workers to share the basically very nice growth of the company. They really wanted to work on their employer brands, and since they were growing, they wanted to have a very efficient recruitment process. So they came to us like let me see, beginning of this year. Just some information. So from the beginning of this year till today, so it was end of last year, sorry, till today, they sent out 66 campaigns. I will show you later what a campaign means. Basically, a campaign is I have an interesting post that I want you to share. That's a campaign. And so they got 900. I'm just going to explain. So shares meaning how many people shared the content, how many people, how many times did my coworkers share a piece of content? So for instance, if Patrick shares a piece of content on 2 social media channels, that's 2 shares. In this case, they had around 960 shares. So 960 times the message was shared through the coworkers on social media. Clicks meaning how many people came back to my website thanks to the effort of my ambassadors, in this case, 6,000. This is B2B, it's not B2C, it's a B2B company. So 6,000 people came back in less than a year, only thanks to the effort of the ambassadors. And impressions means how many times is the message has the message been seen, sorry, on social media thanks to the effort of your ambassadors? That's 255 times. So that means I've seen it, I didn't click on it, but I saw it on my timeline of Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. Another international company is Delaware. They really wanted to work on also conversions and on the awareness because they were growing and not everybody knew the company. They are active over 3 different continents. They have 450 ambassadors, and I think they started like 2 years ago. And this is the overall result after 2 years. They had about 7,000 times that people shared already today. So 7,000 times people have shared. So they have over 450 ambassadors. So they reached 25% of the co-workers that became an ambassador, and they had around 750,000 impressions. So thanks again to the effort of the ambassadors, the messages were seen 750,000 times. Imagine what would be the marketing cost if you want to create that impact. The last one is Romande Energie, which is a Swiss energy company, I think the largest Swiss energy company. They really also wanted to work on their corporate social responsibility because they are really into renewable energy. 2021, they launched 31 campaigns. They have 150 ambassadors, and altogether in 1 year, they had 2,760 shares. So again, 2,760 times the content was shared through the employees. And there was about 7,500 people coming back to the website to discover the content. Again, all these are B2B companies, so it's quite an amazing result for B2B companies. And they have about 439 impressions, meaning again, so many times the message has been seen on social media in Switzerland. So just to show you how big the impacts can be of your ambassadors. Now, just again, this is not, I'm not going to go too much into detail, but what we do is we enable everything so that it becomes much more, it becomes easier. So the first thing we do with our platform is to create an environment where you can easily recruit. So you can just send out a message to your coworkers saying like, we have a community. We start with an engagement community. It would be great if you want to join this. This is what we call a campaign. A campaign is I'm creating a message that I'm going to send to my coworkers and ask them to share, or also to read, obviously, to discover, and eventually to share. The nice thing is that you can change the copy. Now it becomes a bit complex, but if you, for instance, ask your coworkers to share a message like, we are looking for talent, this is great, but this is not the way you are. Also, it's not the way you talk in a cafe. So you can change your copy before you send it to your ambassadors. You can change your copy saying like, I'm looking for a colleague. So the post will be, I'm looking for a colleague, meaning that the post looks very authentic. It's like the person itself wrote it, and it creates much more impact. So you just reach out to your coworkers, ambassadors, saying like, we have something really interesting for you. It would be great if you can discover it. This is what you see here. And eventually, if they're interested, they go into the detail. This is the message of the message that I'm asking my coworkers to spread on their social media channels. You also see on top what social media channels they can share it on. We use all social media channels, but you have the possibility to say like, okay, this piece of content, I don't want to share it on Facebook. I don't want them to share it on Facebook. Then the Facebook button won't appear. But we work with Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Pinterest, WhatsApp, etc., etc. And next year, TikTok will also join. And again, we see it's a bit a cultural thing. Obviously, in Europe and US, LinkedIn is really the most heavily used, but this is for the white collars, which is logical. And then Facebook and Twitter. No, Facebook is for the blue collars. They use Facebook much more. But we see a gradual rise in use of WhatsApp, also for recruitment, and Instagram, obviously, also for recruitment. So there's more and more different social media channels that are used by ambassadors to create impact. What we do is we will go through the whole flow of what is the impact that you've created. Not going to go in detail, but we will mainly measure three things. The first thing is, I have content. Is this content interesting for my coworkers? That's number one. The second thing is this content so interesting that they want to share it? That's number two. And the third thing is, if people share it, is this content creating impact? This is the impact you can see on the bottom. So there's three main things. My content, is it interesting? Is it so interesting that they want to share it? And is it interesting for the outside world? And campaign after campaign, you will see obviously that the results will change, but seeing the fact that we've been sending out 150,000 campaigns, we help you in how do I create messages that create impact internally and that create an impact externally. This is the analyzing part of our program. So it's not just a platform. We are mainly there to help you create the right messages and to create the impact. So this is just an overview of some of the companies we are working with. There's quite a lot of international, very known companies, but there's also smaller companies. We have been working, or we are working with companies with 50 co-workers. We are working with companies like Heineken with 360,000 co-workers. So all this is possible. You do not need to be a big company to create impact through your co-workers and measure the impact and adapt it so that you create the right impact. So I still have, I'm just going to see, I think I still have some time left. So if before there's the questions and answers, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you one example, because then it becomes really important. Then becomes how do you say it? You can imagine what an impact your coworkers can have. You see my screen. So this basically, I will just go through this. This is a big international B2B company, and all these, I would say, pictures, we call them campaigns. That means messages that's been out there on social media. So by that, and that has been, spread by their coworkers. You will see, first thing that you will see is that often the pictures that they are used, they are, and then we come back to the one of the first slides, authentic messages. You'll see also this is the impact figures. You'll see that often if you have people, you create big impact. If the visual is commercial or cold or a stock picture, you create less impact. It doesn't mean that you can't use pictures like this. Just know that you create far less impact. You'll see it here as well. This is a bit seen as a commercial picture. It's somewhat more stock picture. This is just all pictures of their coworkers, and you see that there's 5 times more people that will read the content. So it's really very important. And just to go through how do we analyze results? Well, basically, I just go once through it, and just because it's really interesting. In this case, there's 213 people that were asked. Well, the campaign is sent to 213 ambassadors. Out of the 213, 106 people opened the message. They were interested. It's It depends on the timing when you send out a message, which is important. If you send out a message, obviously in the weekend or in the evening or at noon, there will be less people that will react, which is logical because they are not behind their screen. In this case, there were 50% of the people that were reacting. Out of the 50%, how many people went and read the content? So I get something, I got a small message saying like, hey, we have a message. It would be great if you could discover and share it. In this case, there's about 45% that said, okay, I'm interested, I want to read it. Once that they read the message, in this case, 86% of these 55, they decided, this is interesting, I want to share this. This is what we call the Uber relevance. The relevancy is so high that people are willing to share it. Before, basically, you went to your pub and you were just talking about, I have something to tell you about my company. Now they do it online. And then the most important thing is 49 people shared in total 68 times. So they clicked on 68 times on a button. So they shared it 68 times. And here you see the result. 49 people shared a message, and the impact was 2,424 people came back to read about the open position, because the content here, and I'm sorry it's in Dutch, but the content of the message is Atlas Copco is looking for 200 new colleagues. So this was basically what they wanted, the message that they wanted to get out. 2,424 people went to that environment. And we know in the meantime that there's 250 people that applied for the job, and they hired 30 people. They hired 30 people thanks to the effort of 49 ambassadors, which is just incredible, because we know how much, first of all, money it is, and how much time it takes to reach out to the audience. So that was just a very brief practical thing about, if you create messages, try to get this authenticity, try to get to, and this is what most of the companies do, when you have an employee engagement program, and when you know what people are engaged in your company, the next step is to ask them, can I ask you 5 questions? Can I take a picture of you, because I want to work on my employer brand, and I would like to just ask you, like, why do you like to work here? And you create a post, and then this post you ask your coworkers to spread, and you will see that there's going to be a huge impact if you do this on a regular basis. So basically, I think this is what I wanted to show and tell you out of our experience. So I'm just going to stop sharing, and at least I think I'm going to go back to the environment. I hope that it was clear, but again, we have plenty of time for questions and answers, so I'm very happy to hear all your remarks or questions or whatever you might have.
Thank you so much, Patrick. So, dear colleagues, this is the time for the questions. I see that we do not have any questions in the chat box, but probably you didn't have it before. But now, if you have any questions, you can just switch on your mics and speak loudly, not to spend time on writing the questions in the chat box. Okay, a couple of minutes. If you are thinking about the questions, or if you do not have any questions right now, you can just leave a small feedback in the chat box, just pluses or some comments or anything that you have taken from this lecture. We would appreciate it much, like a feedback of the lecture. Thank you for motivating presentation, especially about authenticity. No questions. So the words of thank you. Thank you very much for interesting presentation. Okay, great comprehensive presentation. All is clear. You know, Patrick, sometimes it happens that all the questions that participants probably have before the lecture, everything was covered within the lecture, and that is why no questions are. If we do not have the questions right now, or probably, I'm sorry, it seems to me there is one. Do you have any observations of how war influence of engagement? Thanks.
I have to be very honest, no. It's also, I just also wanted to, first of all, to mention that I already mentioned it in the beginning, but I'm very, very and extremely honored to be able to do this presentation for this audience, because I know that it's very unusual circumstances also for people running businesses. So I can't even imagine what other challenges you might have except employee engagement. So I feel sometimes, I have to admit, for me it's a bit difficult, because you tend to not speak about what is happening, but we all obviously know what is happening, and I can only imagine what an incredible impact it has. Now, we have some experience from neighboring countries, meaning we are working quite a lot in the Baltic region. Why the Baltic region? And it would be a very interesting question to the audience. But in the Baltic region, there's lots of service centers as well. Like we also know that Ukraine also have quite a lot of ICT services that are at this moment having very difficult times with the war. From the Baltics, we see two things. First of all, the service centers, they are exploding, and there's a real war for talent out there. So they are extremely interested to start a program like this, but I have to be honest, and they are not in Ukraine, but they are they are closer to the conflict than we are. We do see that most of the companies, they will start, when they start an initiative, they put it on next year's agenda, not on this year's agenda, because there's so much uncertainty, which we can obviously understand, but they do understand the impact. So we have a couple of contracts that will start beginning of next year. But again, I can't say more than this, so I'm very sorry that I can't really have a good answer to this very important question.
Thank you so much, Patrick. So one more question. Also interesting to have some links on researchers mentioned to make deep dive into the topic. So yeah, I think that all those links could be included into the presentation that we're going to share with the participants.
Yes, what I will do is I will, next to the presentation, I will also send the links where all this information comes from, so that you can really deep dive if you want, obviously.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you so much, Patrick, for sharing this information, valuable knowledge with us, with our audience. And we will send you all the information, the video recording, the presentation, and the links to the researchers. So have a nice day and see you next time at our other lectures. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Keep up, and I'm very happy to have been here.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.